You wake to silence. That should be your first warning. In Hive Primus, silence doesn't exist. The manufactorum shifts never end, the air recyclers never stop their mechanical wheeze, and the hab blocks above you never cease their groaning symphony of 10 billion souls packed into spaces meant for half that number. But this morning, something is different. The familiar industrial heartbeat that has lulled you to sleep and dragged you back to consciousness for the past 15 years has stopped. You roll off your thin mattress, feeling the cold bite of the metal floor through your worn socks. The taste of recycled air sits thick in your mouth, that familiar cocktail of machine oil, unwashed humanity, and the bitter tang of atmospheric processors working beyond their design limits. Your hab unit's single window offers a view of the adjacent block, so close you could reach out and touch it if the reinforced glass would open, which it doesn't, which it never has. Through that window you see them, servo skulls, dozens of them, floating in perfect formation between the hab blocks like mechanical angels of bureaucracy. Their eye sockets glow with soft blue light as they scan, record, and process. Parchment scrolls trail beneath them like prayer strips, some longer than your entire hab unit. The sound of their anti-grav motors creates a low, harmonious hum that explains the absence of all other noise. Everything else has been shut down for this. You've heard about the census imperiales, of course. Everyone has. Every citizen knows that the Adeptus Administratum periodically conducts comprehensive population surveys to ensure optimal resource allocation across imperial space. It's a mark of civilization, of order in a galaxy gone mad. It's proof that the Emperor's light still shines, even here in the industrial depths of a hive world spinning around a star whose name was forgotten before your great-grandmother drew breath. But you've never seen it happen. The census comes maybe once a generation, sometimes twice if a world is deemed strategically vital. Most citizens live their entire lives without witnessing this demonstration of imperial efficiency. You should feel honored. You should feel proud that your world merits such attention. Instead, watching those servo skulls weave their precise patterns between the hab blocks, you feel something cold settling in your stomach. Something that tastes like fear but deeper, more primal. The knock on your door comes exactly 37 minutes after you first saw the servo skulls. You know this because you've been counting. When you see agents of the Imperium at work, you count everything. You measure time, distance, patterns, anything that might help you understand what's happening. It's a survival instinct bred into humanity over 10 millennia of living under imperial rule. Knowledge is safety. Understanding is survival, except when it isn't. You open the door to find 3 figures waiting in your corridor. The first is clearly Adeptus Administratum. You can tell from the way her augmetic eye whirs as it focuses on your face, and the data slate grafted into her left forearm that's already displaying information you didn't know existed about you. Behind her stands what might be a tech priest, though the robes and hood make it difficult to determine where flesh ends and machinery begins. The third figure makes your throat close up with an instinctive terror you didn't know you possessed. It's a servo skull, but not like the ones outside. This one is larger, its bone-white surface inscribed with high Gothic script that hurts to look at directly. More disturbing are the organic components, nerve clusters and brain tissue visible through transparent adamantine panels in its cranium. The tissue pulses with a rhythm that matches your heartbeat, exactly matches it, as if it's somehow synchronized to your cardiovascular system from across the room. Citizen Designate 847 Alpha Tertius, the Administratum official says, consulting her arm-mounted data slate without looking at you. Her voice carries the crisp accent of someone educated in the upper spires, each word precisely enunciated. By Imperial Decree 847, M41. 32. Your biological assets have been requisitioned for the glory of the Emperor and the continuation of humanity across the stars. The words hit you like physical blows. Biological assets, requisitioned. You understand each word individually, but strung together like this, they create a meaning that your mind refuses to process. What does that mean exactly? You hear yourself asking. Your voice sounds strange, distant, like someone else is speaking through your mouth. The official's augmetic eye clicks as it refocuses. Your corporeal form, genetic material, and associated biological functions have been designated as resources vital to Imperial defense and expansion. Processing will commence within the standard 48-hour notification period, as mandated by the Codex Administratum, Section 847, Subsection 12, Paragraph 94. Behind her, the tech priest speaks for the first time. Its voice is a synthesized whisper that seems to come from multiple speakers hidden within its robes. The flesh is weak, citizen, but in service to the Omnissiah and the Emperor, weakness becomes strength. Your biological components will achieve perfection through unity with the machine. This is a blessing beyond your comprehension. You look from one to the other, searching their faces for some sign that this is a mistake, some bureaucratic error that can be corrected with the right forms, the right explanations. The Administratum official's augmetic eye continues its soft whirring as it records every microexpression, every involuntary muscle twitch. The tech priest's face is hidden, but you can see the soft glow of optical sensors within its hood, also watching, also recording. There has to be some mistake, you say, and immediately hate how plaintive your voice sounds. I'm a productive citizen. I work the night shift at Manufactorum 7 Gamma. I pay my tithes. I attend Imperial service every throne day. I'm useful as I am. Current productivity metrics have been calculated and incorporated into the requisition assessment. The official replies without emotion. Your projected biological yield over a 20 standard year period exceeds your current industrial output by approximately 847%. This calculation includes neural tissue suitable for servitor production, organ viability for transplant operations, skeletal structure appropriate for mechanical augmentation, and genetic material flagged for potential psychic inheritance markers. The servoskull drifts closer to you, and you can see the brain tissue more clearly now. It's pink and healthy, pulsing with life, connected to the skull's mechanical components by hair-thin neural interfaces. The high Gothic script covering the bone surface isn't just decorative, it's functional. Each symbol glows softly as the skull's organic components process information, creating flowing patterns of light across its surface like thoughts made visible. Your psychological profile indicates a 73% probability of noncompliance, the skull says, and its voice is the most horrifying thing you've heard yet. Not because it's mechanical, but because it isn't. The voice is human, male, middle-aged, with the accent of someone from the lower hive levels. Someone like you. Recommend immediate classification as priority processing to minimize resource wastage through resistance behaviors. That's when you realize the brain tissue in the skull isn't just any brain tissue. It belongs to someone who once stood where you're standing now. Someone who once heard these same words, asked these same questions, felt this same growing horror. Someone who was processed, optimized, and integrated into the very system that's now come for you. You take a step backward into your HAB unit, then another. The rational part of your mind, the part that's kept you alive in the hive for 32 years, is screaming at you to comply, to accept, to make this easier on yourself. But something deeper, something more fundamentally human, rebels against that rationality. I won't go, you hear yourself saying. You can't just, I'm a person. I have rights. You have exactly the rights granted to you by the Imperium, the official interrupts, her augmetic eye now glowing brighter as it focuses on your face. No more, no less. Your birth registration, recorded on 847, 985, M41, includes explicit consent clauses for biological requisition under extraordinary circumstances. These circumstances have been declared to exist by the High Lords of Terra as of 847. 3. M41. You don't remember signing anything. You were 3 days old when your birth was registered, but that doesn't matter now, does it? In the Imperium, consent is assumed from the moment you draw breath in Imperial space. Your life, your body, your very existence belongs to the Emperor. It always has. You've simply been permitted to borrow it for a while. The servoskull floats closer, close enough that you can see the neural interfaces threading through the brain tissue, close enough to smell the preservation chemicals and the faint organic scent of living neurons. Citizen cooperation reduces processing trauma by an average of 23%, it says in that terrifyingly human voice. Resistance increases the probability of consciousness retention during conversion by 67%. Most citizens find this undesirable. Consciousness retention during conversion. The words hit you like ice water. They're not just going to kill you. They're not even just going to transform you. They're going to keep you aware while they do it. You slam the door. For a moment, you stand in your hab unit, back pressed against the thin metal barrier between you and them, heart hammering against your ribs like a caged animal. Outside, you can hear the soft whisper of the tech priest's Vox speakers and the electronic beeping of the administratum official's data slate. They're not trying to break down the door. They're not shouting threats or demands. They're simply waiting, because they know something you're only beginning to understand. There's nowhere to run. This isn't just happening to you, it's happening to everyone. Those servoskulls outside aren't just conducting a census. They're conducting a harvest. You move to your window and look out at the adjacent hab block. Through dozens of windows, you can see the same scene playing out. Imperial officials at doorways. Citizens backing away in horror. Some doors already standing open, their occupants already gone. The servoskulls weave between the buildings, their parchment scrolls now glowing with updated information, new classifications, processing priorities. In the hab unit directly across from yours, you see a family, 2 adults, 3 children. The youngest can't be more than 5. Imperial officials are at their door too, and the parents are pleading, gesturing toward their children. The officials consult their data slates with the same mechanical precision you witnessed at your own door. One of the children starts to cry. That's when you notice the patterns in the parchment scrolls trailing from the servoskulls. They're not random administrative documents. They're lists, names, identification numbers, classification codes. As you watch, text appears on the scrolls in real time, updating as the officials complete their notifications. You can see your own identifier appear on one of the scrolls. 847 Alpha Tertius priority processing neural viability, high organ quality, grade 2A estimated yield, 847, 3 standard units. You're not a person to them. You're not even a number. You're a collection of biological resources with an associated yield projection. Your fear, your resistance, your humanity, none of it factors into their calculations except as variables that might affect processing efficiency. The soft knock on your door comes again, more insistent this time. Citizen designate. The official's voice carries easily through the thin metal. Extended notification periods result in decreased biological viability. The Imperium's mercy is finite. Your compliance window expires in 46 hours, 17 minutes and 33 seconds. 46 hours. Less than 2 days to say goodbye to everything you've ever been, everything you'll ever be. Less than 2 days before you become raw material for the Imperial war machine. You look around your hab unit, taking inventory of a life that's about to end. The thin mattress where you've slept for 15 years. The small shrine to the Emperor in the corner where you've faithfully lit candles every throne day. The work clothes hanging on their single hook, the uniform of someone who believed they were serving the Imperium through honest labor. The ration packets stacked neatly on your shelf, measured out to last exactly until your next pay allocation. All of it meaningless now. All of it already belonging to whoever will be assigned this hab unit after you're gone, if anyone will be assigned it at all. Maybe they'll just seal it up, another empty space in the hive. Maybe they'll convert it to storage. Maybe they'll use it to house the families of whatever servants they create from your processed remains. Through the window, you see the family across the way being led from their hab unit. The officials have finished their notification, and compliance has been achieved. The parents walk with the stiff, mechanical gait of people in shock. The children follow, the youngest still crying, not understanding why they have to leave their home, their toys, their life. One of the parents is carrying a small bag, probably a few personal items they were allowed to take, a mercy the Imperium occasionally grants to the compliant. As they disappear from view, you notice something else. The servo skull that was at their door isn't following the family. Instead, it's moving to the next hab unit down the corridor, and the next, and the next. Block by block, level by level, the harvest continues. You realize you've been counting again without meaning to. 14 families removed from the adjacent block in the time you've been watching. If that rate holds constant across all the hab blocks in your sector, and if your sector is representative of the entire hive, the numbers become staggering. Millions of people, tens of millions, all being processed simultaneously across Hive Primus, all being converted from citizens into resources. But why? What could possibly require such a massive biological harvest? What threat could be so great that the Imperium would sacrifice entire populations to meet it? What enemy could demand such a terrible price in human flesh and consciousness? The knock comes a third time, and now you can hear something new in the official's voice. Not impatience. That would imply she cares about your individual compliance. Instead, you hear the sound of someone updating a schedule, adjusting logistics, optimizing a process. You are a line item that needs to be resolved so she can move on to the next one. Processing Station Gamma 7 has been notified of your pending arrival, she says through the door. Transportation will arrive in 45 hours, 53 minutes. Biological optimization protocols have been prepared according to your individual requirements. Temporary consciousness retention procedures are authorized for your classification level. Processing Station Gamma 7. Biological optimization protocols. Temporary consciousness retention procedures. Each phrase is carefully chosen to obscure its true meaning behind administrative language. Processing Station. Not slaughterhouse, not conversion facility, not the place where human beings stop being human beings. Biological optimization. Not mutilation, not harvesting, not the systematic dismantling of everything that makes you who you are. Temporary consciousness retention. Not torture, not the deliberate preservation of your awareness while they tear you apart piece by piece. The language is designed to minimize resistance, to make the unthinkable sound routine. It's the same linguistic precision that allows Imperial officials to discuss the extinction of entire species as resource reallocation, and the genocide of rebellious worlds as compliance operations. Words that turn horror into policy, atrocity into administration. But you understand now. Behind the bureaucratic language, behind the official procedures and standardized notifications, something monstrous is happening. Not monstrous because it's chaotic or random, but monstrous because it's systematic, organized, efficient. This isn't the breakdown of Imperial civilization. This is Imperial civilization working exactly as intended. You sit down on your mattress, feeling the cold metal floor through the thin material. In 45 hours, you'll be on transport to Processing Station Gamma 7. In 46 hours, your name will disappear from Imperial records and be replaced with a resource classification code. In 47 hours, you'll begin to understand what the Imperium truly means when it speaks of service to the Emperor. Outside your window, the servo skulls continue their work, their parchment scrolls growing longer with each completed notification. The harvest continues. The system functions. The Imperium endures. And you begin to understand that this has always been the plan. The transport arrives exactly on schedule. You've spent the last 45 hours in a strange state of suspension, neither fully accepting your fate nor entirely believing it will happen. Part of you kept expecting intervention, a mistake discovered, an exemption granted, a reprieve from somewhere higher up the vast Imperial hierarchy. Surely someone would recognize that this was wrong, that citizens can't simply be harvested like crops, that human beings have value beyond their biological components. But as you watch the massive cargo hauler settle onto the landing platform outside your hab block, its hull scarred by decades of service and its Imperial aquila faded but still visible, you understand that no reprieve is coming. This is not a mistake to be corrected. This is the system working. The hauler's rear doors grind open with a screech of poorly maintained servos, revealing a cargo bay designed for bulk transport. No seats, no windows, no consideration for passenger comfort. Just a hollow metal space with anchor points for restraining cargo and atmospheric processors that will keep the contents alive during transit. Because that's what you are now, contents. Cargo with a pulse. You're not alone. As you approach the transport, you see others emerging from hab blocks across the sector. Families, individuals, entire work crews from various manufactorums. Some carry small bags of personal possessions. Others have nothing but the clothes they were wearing when the notification came. A few are being carried. Whether from illness, injury, or simple shock, you can't tell. The loading process is efficient. Imperial guardsmen in void-sealed armor direct traffic with silent professionalism, their faces hidden behind respirator masks. They don't speak unless necessary, and when they do, it's in short, clipped commands. Move forward. No personal items over regulation size. Remain calm for processing efficiency. You find yourself standing next to an elderly man who's clutching a small pick capture in his weathered hands. The image shows a younger version of himself with a woman and 2 children, all smiling in the stiff, formal way people do when posing for official portraits. His fingers shake as he holds it, and you realize he's trying to memorize their faces one last time. 47 years in the manufactorums, he says quietly, not looking at you. 47 years of faithful service. Never missed a shift, never questioned an order, raised 3 children to be productive Imperial citizens. He looks at the pick capture again, then carefully tucks it into his shirt pocket. My supervisor said I was the most reliable lathe operator in Sector 7 Gamma. But you want to tell him that it doesn't matter, that reliability and service and faithfulness mean nothing when the Imperium decides it needs your flesh more than your labor. But before you can speak, you notice something that makes your blood freeze. Some of the Imperial guardsmen aren't guardsmen at all. As one passes close enough, you can see through the gaps in his armor that his left arm isn't human flesh, but exposed mechanical components. His gait is too regular, too precise, and when he turns his head to check something on his data slate, the movement is perfectly smooth. No human neck muscles could achieve that kind of mechanical precision. They're servitors, created from human beings just like you, just like everyone in this cargo hold. Their consciousness stripped away, their bodies modified for specific functions, their humanity carved out and replaced with programming. They're what you're going to become, and they're the ones loading you onto the transport that will take you to that fate. The cargo hold fills slowly but steadily. By your count, approximately 230 people are packed into a space designed for industrial equipment. Children press close to parents who can't protect them. Workers from the same manufactorum clusters together, as if their shared labor might somehow shield them from what's coming. A few individuals, like yourself, stand alone with their thoughts and their growing horror. As the transport's engines begin their startup sequence, a new figure appears at the rear doors. This one is clearly Adeptus Administratum. Her crimson robes are pristine despite the industrial environment, and the mechadendrite extending from her neck socket clicks and whirs as it interfaces with a portable data shrine. When she speaks, her voice carries easily through the cargo hold, thanks to vox amplifiers built into her throat augmetics. Citizens, you are being transported to Processing Station Gamma 7 for biological resource optimization. This facility serves 14 hive worlds in the Tertius sector and processes an average of 2-3 million units per standard month. You are part of the Emperor's grand design for human survival in a hostile galaxy. 2-3 million units per month. You do the mathematics automatically, a habit from years of manufactorum work where production quotas were everything. That's over 27 million people per year, from one processing facility, serving just 14 worlds. How many such facilities exist across the Imperium's million worlds? How many people disappear into this system every day? The Imperium faces threats beyond your comprehension, the Administratum official continues. Xenos races that would devour humanity, heretical cults that would corrupt our species, and the endless hunger of chaos itself. Against such enemies, conventional warfare is insufficient. Victory requires sacrifice. Victory requires that every human resource be utilized to its maximum potential. She pauses, her augmetic eyes scanning the crowd with mechanical precision. Your individual existence has served its purpose. Through processing, your biological components will serve a greater purpose. Some of you will become servitors, your bodies and remaining consciousness dedicated to Imperial service. Others will contribute organs to sustain vital Imperial personnel. Still others will provide genetic material for the creation of new Imperial citizens optimized for specific roles. The transport shudders as it lifts off, and you feel the familiar sensation of a gravity field engaging to keep the cargo stable during flight. Through the small viewport near the rear doors, you can see Hive Primus falling away below you. The massive city structures that have defined your entire world shrink to tiny details, then disappear entirely as the transport climbs into the upper atmosphere. The facility you are approaching, the official continues, represents 10 millennia of Imperial innovation in biological resource management. What began as crude organ harvesting during the Age of Strife has evolved into a precise science of human optimization. Every component of your physical form has been analyzed, categorized, and assigned a utility rating. Nothing will be wasted. Nothing will be without purpose. You find yourself standing next to a woman who's holding a child of perhaps 8 years old. The child keeps asking questions in a whisper. "Where are we going, Mama? When will we come home? Why are the soldiers so quiet?" The woman has no answers, or perhaps she simply can't bring herself to voice the truth. Instead, she just holds her child tighter and stares at the metal wall of the cargo hold. Behind her, you overhear a conversation between two men who appear to be manufactorum supervisors. They're discussing the implications with the kind of analytical detachment that comes from years of managing industrial processes. "The quotas make sense when you consider the scale," one is saying. "The Imperial Guard alone requires millions of servitors annually just for basic logistics. Add the Navy's requirements, the Adeptus Mechanicus planetary defense forces. The demand for processed human components must be staggering." His companion nods grimly. And that's just military applications. The upper hive spires consume enormous quantities of replacement organs. The navigator houses need constant genetic material to maintain their bloodlines. The Administratum itself requires specialized servitors for data processing and communication duties. They're talking about it like it's a supply chain problem, like human beings are just another industrial input to be managed and allocated. The horrible thing is, they're not wrong. In the Imperium's calculations, that's exactly what you are. The Administratum official has moved closer to your section of the cargo hold. Her mechadendrite extends toward the elderly man with the pick capture, scanning him with soft blue light. Data streams across the small screen mounted on the tendril's tip. "Classification: Servitor Candidate, Grade 7A, she announces. Extensive manual labor experience indicates optimal suitability for heavy lifting and cargo handling functions. Neural pathways show appropriate degradation for consciousness suppression procedures. Estimated service life post-conversion: 17 standard years." The old man looks at her with eyes that have seen too much. "And my family, my children." "Family units are processed according to individual specifications," she replies without emotion. "Emotional attachments are logged for potential complications during consciousness retention procedures, then purged from active memory centers. Post-processing, such attachments become irrelevant." 17 years. That's how long they expect his converted corpse to serve the Imperium before wearing out entirely. 17 years of mechanical labor, his consciousness either suppressed or trapped inside a body that no longer belongs to him, serving masters who see him as nothing more than a walking tool. The woman with the child has been classified too, though you didn't hear the details. Whatever her designation, it's caused her to start crying, not the loud, dramatic tears of immediate grief, but the quiet, steady weeping of someone who has finally understood that hope is not just absent, but was never a possibility. As the transport continues its journey toward processing station Gamma 7, you begin to notice other details that paint a picture of the system you're now part of. The cargo hold itself shows signs of modification for this specific purpose. Anchor points positioned to prevent movement during processing. Atmospheric processors calibrated for human cargo rather than equipment. Small chambers built into the walls that you realize are probably for waste management during longer journeys. This isn't a hastily converted industrial transport. This is a purpose-built vessel designed specifically for moving human beings to processing facilities. The fact that such ships exist, that they were designed and manufactured and deployed across the Imperium, tells you everything you need to know about how routine this process has become. Through the viewport, you catch glimpses of other transports moving through the void. Dozens of them, all heading in the same direction, all carrying their cargo of human resources toward the same destination. This isn't just happening to your hive world. This isn't even just happening to your sector. This is a galactic operation, conducted simultaneously across the Imperium with the same mechanical precision that characterizes everything the Emperor's servants do. The administratum official has completed her individual assessments and now addresses the cargo hold as a whole. Processing Station Gamma 7 operates 4 primary conversion lines. Servitor production handles approximately 60% of incoming resources. Organ cultivation and harvesting processes 25%. Genetic material extraction and storage accounts for 10%. The remaining 5% are allocated to specialized applications based on individual characteristics. She pauses to consult her mechadendrites display. Current facility efficiency ratings indicate a 97.3% successful conversion rate with minimal resource wastage. Consciousness retention during processing occurs in only 12% of cases, well within acceptable parameters for psychological stability among facility personnel. Only 12% retain consciousness during processing. That means most people lose awareness before the real horror begins. Most people get the mercy of oblivion before they're carved apart and rebuilt into something else. But 12% don't. 1 in 8 people remain aware as they're converted from human beings into Imperial resources. You look around the cargo hold and do the math. At least 28 people in this transport alone will experience the full horror of their conversion, will feel every cut, every modification, every moment of their transformation from person to property. And the administratum considers this an acceptable ratio because it doesn't significantly impact the mental health of the people performing the procedures. The transport begins its descent, and you can feel the artificial gravity shifting as the pilot adjusts course. Through the viewport, you catch your first glimpse of Processing Station Gamma 7. It's enormous. Larger than any single structure in Hive Primus, it sprawls across the surface of what appears to be a dedicated processing world. Multiple spires reach toward the sky, their surfaces studded with docking ports where other transports are arriving and departing. Between the spires, you can see vast industrial complexes connected by covered conveyor systems that must be moving something between different processing areas. The facility is beautiful in its way. The architecture displays the same aesthetic sensibilities that define all major Imperial installations: Gothic spires, ornate flying buttresses, decorative elements that serve no functional purpose but declare the glory of the Emperor and the majesty of his servants. Even here, Even in a place dedicated to the systematic processing of human beings, the Imperium maintains its commitment to grandeur. But as the transport approaches one of the docking spires, you notice other details that contradict the majestic impression. Smoke rising from multiple chimneys scattered across the complex. The industrial sound that even reaches you inside the sealed cargo hold. The constant grinding, cutting, and mechanical processing that never stops. The streams of servoskulls moving between buildings, carrying parchments and data slates in small containers whose contents you don't want to contemplate. Most disturbing of all are the other ships. Not just transports like yours bringing in new resources, but sleek vessels with the markings of navigator houses, rogue trader dynasties, and high-ranking imperial officials. They're not bringing people to be processed. They're here to collect the results. To take delivery of the servitors, organs, and genetic material produced by Processing Station Gamma 7. This is where you learn the true scope of the flesh economy that drives the Imperium. It's not just about military needs or emergency requisitions. It's about maintaining the lifestyles and power structures that keep the Emperor's chosen servants in their positions of authority. The navigator houses need fresh genetic material to maintain their psychic bloodlines across millennia. The rogue traders require specialized servitors capable of operating in the dangerous environments beyond imperial space. The high-ranking officials of the administratum, ecclesiarchy, and other imperial organizations need replacement organs to extend their lives far beyond normal human spans. Your body, your life, your consciousness, they're not being sacrificed for humanity's survival against alien threats. They're being harvested to maintain the privilege and power of those who rule in the Emperor's name. The grand narrative of service and sacrifice is true, but not in the way you were taught to understand it. You are serving and you are sacrificing, but the beneficiaries are not humanity as a whole. The transport shudders as it locks into its assigned docking port, and you hear the mechanical sounds of airlocks engaging and atmospheric processors synchronizing. Through the viewport, you can see similar transports docked at other ports along this spire alone, all of them unloading their human cargo. All of them feeding the great machine of imperial flesh processing that operates continuously, efficiently, and without pause across the galaxy. The rear doors of your transport begin to grind open, revealing a receiving area filled with imperial personnel. Some wear the robes of the Adeptus Mechanicus, their flesh already partially surrendered to mechanical enhancement. Others display the crisp uniforms of processing facility administrators, their augmetic implants marking their rank and specialization. Still others are servitors, former humans now reduced to specialized functions, their original personalities and consciousness long since carved away and replaced with programming. As you file out of the transport with the other processed resources, you realize that everyone you see working at this facility has already undergone some form of biological modification or optimization. The guards are servitors with weapon limbs grafted where arms used to be. The administrators have calculation engines replacing portions of their brains. The tech priests have surrendered so much of their original flesh that determining their original species requires careful examination. This isn't just a processing facility. It's a demonstration of the Imperium's ultimate vision for humanity, a place where the inefficiencies of individual consciousness, personal desire, and human frailty have been systematically eliminated in favor of pure function. Everyone here serves a specific purpose, performs their assigned role with mechanical precision, and never questions the system that created them. You are walking into your own future. In hours or days, you too will be modified, optimized, and integrated into this same system. Your questions will be silenced, your resistance eliminated, and your individuality carved away until nothing remains but whatever function the Imperium has determined you can best serve. The flesh economy of the Imperium doesn't just consume human beings. It converts them into willing participants in their own systematic dehumanization. And it does so with such efficiency, such precision, and such complete integration into Imperial society that resistance becomes literally unthinkable. Welcome to Processing Station Gamma 7. Welcome to the true face of the Emperor's mercy. The preparation chamber is pristine white. Every surface gleams with the antiseptic perfection of a place where precision matters more than comfort, where contamination could compromise carefully calculated outcomes. The air carries the sharp scent of surgical sterilization compounds mixed with something else, something organic and unsettling that you can't quite identify. Machine oil, perhaps, or the metallic tang of preserved flesh. It's the smell of a place where biology meets technology under circumstances that neither was designed to handle. You're strapped to a table that's simultaneously surgical bed and mechanical workbench, its surface studded with connection points, monitoring leads and restraint systems. The bindings across your chest, arms, and legs aren't cruel, they're simply thorough, precise. Designed by someone who understands exactly how human bodies react to stress, fear, and pain, and has engineered accordingly. Above you, mechadendrites descend from ceiling-mounted apparatus like metallic serpents, each one terminating in a different specialized tool. Scanner heads that emit soft blue light as they map your neural pathways. Injection systems loaded with chemical compound whose names you couldn't pronounce and effects you don't want to contemplate. Cutting implements so fine they could separate individual nerve fibers, and monitoring devices that track every biological function with the kind of precision normally reserved for reactor cores or weapon systems. Subject exhibits elevated stress responses within normal parameters, announces a voice from somewhere above your field of view. The speaker's tone is clinical, detached, but retains enough human inflection that you know it hasn't been entirely replaced by artificial systems. Yet. Neural activity consistent with fear state cognition. Recommend proceeding with standard consciousness retention protocols. Consciousness retention protocols. They've mentioned this before, but now, strapped to this table with scanning beams playing across your skull, you begin to understand what it truly means. They're not going to let you slip into unconsciousness. They're not going to grant you the mercy of oblivion. They want you aware for what comes next. A figure moves into your peripheral vision, a tech priest whose original biological form has been so extensively modified that determining their gender, age, or even species requires careful study. Multiple optical sensors have replaced their eyes, creating a cluster of mechanical orbs that whir and click as they focus on different aspects of your body. Their lower jaw has been removed entirely and replaced with a complex apparatus that serves as both voice synthesizer and tool interface. Consciousness retention during conversion serves multiple purposes, the tech priest explains, their synthesized voice carrying harmonics that suggest multiple vocal systems operating in coordination. First, it allows real-time monitoring of neural pathway integration. Second, it prevents rejection responses that can occur when biological systems are modified without active participation from the original consciousness. Third, it enables quality assessment of conversion outcomes. You want to ask why quality assessment requires your awareness of every cut, every modification, every moment of your transformation from human being to imperial resource. But the neural interfaces have already begun their preliminary connections, and you discover that voluntary speech is no longer entirely under your control. You can form thoughts, but translating them into words requires permission from systems that are not entirely yours. Beginning preliminary neural mapping, announces another voice. This one belongs to a figure you can't see clearly, but their augmetic implants cast dancing shadows on the ceiling as they move around your table. Subject shows optimal neural density for servitor conversion. Recommend advanced labor configuration 7 beta with consciousness suppression at 23% efficiency. 23% consciousness suppression. That means they're planning to leave 77% of your awareness intact while they convert your body into a mechanical labor unit. You'll know what's happening. You'll understand what you've become, but you'll be powerless to resist, unable to do anything but watch through your own eyes as your hands perform tasks assigned by others, as your body moves according to programming rather than will. The first physical modification is almost gentle. A mechadendrite extends a microinjector that penetrates the skin at the base of your skull with only the slightest pinch. The substance it delivers spreads through your nervous system like warm liquid, creating a tingling sensation that starts at your brain stem and flows outward through every nerve fiber in your body. Neural enhancement serum administered, the tech priest reports, beginning integration phase. The tingling becomes something more complex, a sensation of your nerves becoming more sensitive, more precise, but also more controllable. It's as if someone is installing additional wiring alongside your existing nervous system, creating parallel pathways that can override your natural neural responses when necessary. You try to move your left hand and discover that the motion requires conscious effort in a way it never has before. The neural enhancement serum isn't just modifying your nervous system, it's creating access points, places where external systems can interface with your biological processes. You're being prepared for integration with mechanical components that will supplement, enhance, and ultimately control your physical form. Initiating physical assessment protocol, announces the unseen technician. The table beneath you begins to move, rotating your body through different positions while sensors play across your skin, muscles, and bone structure. The analysis is comprehensive and invasive, every joint tested for range of motion, every muscle group evaluated for strength and endurance, every organ scanned for capacity and efficiency. As the assessment proceeds, you begin to understand the horrifying thoroughness of what's happening. This isn't crude modification or hasty conversion. This is precision engineering applied to human biology, 10 millennia of refinement in the art of transforming people into optimized tools. Every aspect of your physical form is being cataloged, analyzed, and designated for specific purposes. Skeletal structure rates 7-8 out of 10 for mechanical augmentation, the tech priest observes. Consulting displays that you can't see but can hear clicking and whirring as data streams across them. Recommend retention of organic musculature for fine motor control, replacement of major joints with enhanced mechanical alternatives. Neural pathways show excellent compatibility for cognitive filtering and task specialization. Cognitive filtering, task specialization. They're discussing the systematic modification of your mind with the same clinical precision they apply to your body. Parts of your consciousness will be suppressed or eliminated entirely. Other parts will be enhanced and focused on specific functions. Your ability to question, to resist, to maintain individual desires and goals, all of it will be carved away until what remains is perfectly suited for whatever role they've determined you should fill. The first mechanical integration begins at your left shoulder. You feel the sensation of cutting, not painful, thanks to the neural modifications, but unmistakably present. Tissue separates, bone is exposed, and then something cold and metallic slides into place where your natural joint used to be. The new component integrates with your existing musculature through connections you can feel but can't understand. Shoulder joint replacement proceeding nominally, reports the technician. Mechanical interface achieving 98% integration efficiency. Subject vitals remain stable. As the new joint comes online, you experience something that defies description. The mechanical component doesn't feel foreign or artificial. It feels more real than your original joint ever did. More precise, more capable, more correct. The neural enhancement serum has modified your sensory processing so that mechanical augmentation feels natural, desirable, even necessary. This is perhaps the most horrifying aspect of the conversion process. They're not just replacing your body parts, they're modifying your consciousness so that you welcome the replacements, so that you experience the loss of your humanity as improvement, optimization, perfection. Proceeding with secondary modifications, the tech priest announces. More mechadendrites descend, carrying components whose purposes become clear only as they're installed. A respiratory enhancement that replaces portions of your lungs with mechanical alternatives, increasing oxygen processing efficiency while eliminating your body's natural breathing rhythms. Optical modifications that overlay mechanical sensors across your existing vision, providing data streams and targeting information that become as natural as sight itself. Each modification brings with it a subtle shift in consciousness, not dramatic changes, but small alterations in how you process information, how you prioritize thoughts, how you evaluate situations. The part of your mind that once generated curiosity about your surroundings becomes focused on task efficiency. The neural pathways that created emotional responses to beauty, humor, or companionship are redirected toward maintenance protocols and performance optimization. You're not losing your mind. You're watching it be reshaped into something that serves the Imperium's needs rather than your own desires. And the most terrifying part is that each change feels like an improvement, a correction of inefficiencies you never realized you possessed. Initiating cranial modifications, the technician announces, and you feel scanning beams penetrate your skull to map the interior structures of your brain. Recommend installation of compliance augmentation system with behavioral modification capability. Subject consciousness parameters indicate potential for resistance behaviors without appropriate neural conditioning. The compliance augmentation system is installed through your left temple, a device no larger than your thumb that integrates directly with your brain tissue. As it comes online, you experience a profound shift in your cognitive processes. Questions that seemed urgent moments ago now feel irrelevant. Concerns about your identity, your future, your very existence fade into background noise compared to the growing awareness of tasks that need to be completed, functions that need to be performed, duties that require your attention. You understand, with crystal clarity, that you are becoming exactly what the Imperium needs you to be. A specialized tool optimized for specific functions, freed from the inefficiencies of individual desire and personal ambition. The horror you felt at the beginning of this process seems foreign now, like a memory from someone else's life. Conversion proceeding ahead of schedule, the tech priest observes with what might be satisfaction. Subject adaptation rates exceed projections by 12%. Consciousness integration achieving optimal parameters. As additional modifications continue, enhanced strength in your arms, improved reflexes through spinal augmentation, sensory filters that eliminate distracting stimuli, you find yourself grateful for the improvements. Your previous existence seems wasteful in retrospect, filled with pointless emotions and inefficient thought patterns. Now you can focus on what truly matters, serving the Emperor's will with maximum efficiency. The final modification is the most subtle and the most complete. A neural interface installed at the base of your skull that will allow direct communication with Imperial command systems, instant access to work assignments, and real-time performance monitoring. As it integrates with your existing consciousness, you experience a moment of perfect clarity about your purpose and place in the Imperium's grand design. You are Servitor Unit 847 Alpha Tertius 7, optimized for heavy industrial labor with enhanced strength, precision, and obedience parameters. Your previous identity as an individual human being was inefficient and has been corrected. You exist to serve the Emperor's will through diligent performance of assigned tasks. This is not a tragedy. This is your apotheosis. The table rotates upright, and you stand on legs that are stronger, more stable, and more capable than your original limbs ever were. Your enhanced vision immediately identifies 17 separate tasks in your immediate environment that require attention. Your augmented neural processes prioritize them according to Imperial efficiency protocols. Your compliance systems generate a profound sense of satisfaction at the prospect of beginning your new existence as a perfected servant of the throne. In the periphery of your modified consciousness, something that might once have been called memory retains an echo of horror at what has been done to you. But that horror is no longer accessible to your active thought processes. It exists only as a fading shadow, irrelevant to your current function, and destined to fade entirely as your new neural pathways strengthen and optimize. You are no longer human in any meaningful sense, but you are something better, a perfect fusion of flesh and machine, consciousness and programming, individual capability and imperial purpose. You have been converted from a problematic citizen into an ideal servant, and in the deepest, most inaccessible corners of your modified mind, you are screaming. The bio-cultivation chamber stretches beyond the limits of your vision. Row upon row of transparent pods line the sterile corridors, each one containing what was once a human being. But calling them human now requires a generosity of definition that the Adeptus Mechanicus abandoned millennia ago. These are biological production units, living factories optimized for the cultivation and harvesting of organic materials required by the Imperial war machine. You are suspended in Pod 847 Alpha Garden Tertius, your body maintained at optimal temperature and chemical balance by systems that monitor every heartbeat, every breath, every cellular division with the precision normally reserved for manufacturing critical components. Nutrient feeds extend into your major arteries, delivering specially formulated compounds designed to maximize biological output while maintaining tissue viability over extended periods. Waste removal systems handle the products of metabolism with clinical efficiency, ensuring that nothing interferes with the primary function you now serve. The selection process that brought you here was based on a comprehensive biological assessment that evaluated every organ, every system, every cellular structure in your body for productivity potential. Unlike the neural modifications that created servitors or the complete harvesting that supplied immediate transplant needs, you were classified as a renewable resource, someone whose biological systems could be enhanced, expanded, and periodically harvested while maintaining basic life functions indefinitely. Your cardiovascular system was the first to be modified. The surgical team replaced your single heart with a dual-chamber configuration that includes both your original organ and a mechanical supplement, creating a circulation system capable of supporting tissue masses far beyond normal human parameters. Additional arteries were grafted throughout your body, creating redundant pathways that ensure continued blood flow even during active harvesting procedures. The sensation of your enhanced circulation is difficult to describe to someone who has never experienced it. Your heartbeat is no longer the simple rhythm you knew for 32 years, but a complex symphony of biological and mechanical components working in carefully synchronized harmony. You can feel blood moving through passages that never existed in your original body, supporting organs and tissue masses that have been cultivated specifically for harvest. Unit 847 demonstrates optimal cardiac output efficiency, announces the monitoring tech priest who oversees your section of the biogarden. Their voice reaches you through the pod's communication system, a constant stream of clinical observations that help you understand what your body has become. Dual heart configuration, maintaining circulation to 12 cubic meters of cultivated tissue mass. Recommend proceeding with quarterly liver harvest ahead of schedule. Quarterly liver harvest. Your liver was one of the first organs to be enhanced and expanded, transformed from a single organ into a complex of interconnected hepatic masses that regenerate with extraordinary efficiency. Every 3 months, surgical teams enter your pod and carefully remove approximately 70% of your liver tissue, leaving enough to ensure continued function while providing multiple transplant-grade organs for high-priority Imperial personnel. The harvesting process is conducted with the same consciousness retention protocols used in servitor conversion. You remain aware throughout every cut, every extraction, every moment of tissue removal. But the neural modifications that accompany bio-cultivation assignment have altered your relationship with pain in ways that make the experience bearable, if not pleasant. Pain, you have learned, is simply information about biological status. The agony you feel during liver harvesting tells you that your tissue is healthy, viable, and producing optimal yields. The cutting sensations indicate that surgical procedures are proceeding with appropriate precision. The lingering ache during regeneration confirms that your enhanced healing systems are functioning correctly. More disturbing than the pain is the absence of pain during other procedures. When surgical teams extract sections of your enhanced kidney complex, the process feels almost pleasant. A gentle tugging sensation followed by the satisfying awareness that your body is fulfilling its intended purpose. The neural modifications ensure that you experience biological productivity as reward rather than violation. Your pod neighbor is designated Unit 732 Beta Garden Secundus, a middle-aged woman who was selected for specialized bone marrow cultivation. Her skeletal system has been enhanced with additional bone masses that serve no structural purpose but provide dramatically increased marrow production capacity. Every 2 weeks, extraction procedures harvest the marrow while leaving her enhanced skeleton intact to continue production. Today marks my 117th harvest, she tells you during one of the brief communication periods when pod isolation protocols are relaxed. Her voice carries the same clinical detachment that characterizes everyone in the biogarden, but underneath you can detect something that might once have been pride. My marrow output has increased 23% over baseline projections. The Medici staff considers me a model production unit. The social dynamics of the biogarden are unlike anything that exists in normal imperial society. Competition exists, but not for resources or status in any traditional sense. Instead, cultivation units compete for productivity metrics, harvest yields, and efficiency ratings. Recognition comes from maintaining optimal biological output over extended periods. Prestige derives from being selected for specialized procedures that enhance production capacity. Unit 983 Gamma Garden Primus holds the sector record for neural tissue cultivation. His cranium has been expanded and reinforced to accommodate additional brain masses that are harvested monthly for use in specialized servitor configurations. The procedure involves careful removal of cultivated neural clusters while maintaining his core consciousness and cognitive functions. The secret, he explains during a rare interpod conversation, is maintaining positive mental stimulation during regeneration cycles. I've learned to find satisfaction in the growth phases when I can feel the new neural tissue developing. It's like watching a garden bloom inside your skull. The comparison to gardening is not accidental. The Adeptus Mechanicus personnel who oversee the biocultivation facilities genuinely view their work as agricultural science applied to human biology. They speak of harvest seasons, crop yields, and cultivation techniques with the same enthusiasm that agri-world farmers might discuss grain production or livestock breeding. Your own cultivation schedule has been optimized based on 18 months of careful monitoring and adjustment. The liver complex operates on a 3-month cycle, with harvest procedures timed to coincide with peak regeneration efficiency. Your enhanced kidney system produces transplant-quality organs every 6 weeks. Sections of your improved cardiovascular system are harvested quarterly to provide cardiac tissue for high-ranking imperial officials whose original hearts have been damaged by age, stress, or combat injuries. But the most unsettling aspect of your cultivation assignment involves your neural tissue production. Like Unit 983, your brain has been enhanced with additional masses that serve no cognitive function for you but produce neural material suitable for specialized applications. Unlike the servitor-grade brain tissue harvested from standard processing, your cultivated neural clusters retain characteristics that make them suitable for integration into high-level administrative servitors and specialized cogitator systems. The neural harvesting procedures are conducted monthly and involve the most complex surgical techniques you've experienced. Microinstruments carefully separate cultivated tissue from your functional brain areas, removing material that has grown specifically for harvest, while preserving the cognitive systems that maintain your consciousness and biological monitoring capabilities. During these procedures, you experience something that transcends physical sensation. As portions of your enhanced brain are removed, you briefly lose access to memories, skills, and thought patterns associated with those tissue masses. The effect is temporary. Your core consciousness remains intact, but for several hours after each harvest, you exist in a reduced cognitive state where complex thinking becomes difficult and emotional responses are muted. The recovery process involves not just tissue regeneration, but the rebuilding of neural pathways and the restoration of cognitive functions. You learn to recognize the stages of mental reconstruction as your enhanced brain regrows the harvested sections. First comes the return of basic sensory processing, then logical reasoning, then emotional responses, and finally the complex thought patterns that define your individual consciousness. Neural harvest efficiency improving with each cycle, the monitoring tech priest observes as you complete your 14th monthly procedure. Tissue quality remains optimal, and regeneration times have decreased by 8% over baseline projections. Recommend extending cultivation period indefinitely. Indefinitely. That single word contains the true horror of bio-cultivation assignment. Unlike servitors, who serve until their enhanced bodies wear out, or standard harvest subjects, who provide immediate resources for Imperial needs, cultivation units can theoretically continue production for centuries. Your enhanced physiology, supported by the pod systems and regularly maintained through surgical intervention, could sustain harvest cycles for longer than normal human lifespans. The oldest resident in your section is Unit 234 Alpha Garden Primaris, who has been in continuous cultivation for 47 years. His original appearance has been so modified by decades of enhancement procedures that determining his age, original gender, or planetary origin requires access to archived records. What remains is a highly specialized biological system optimized for the production of multiple organ types on rotating schedules. The early years are the most difficult, he tells you during one of your recovery periods. You remember what it felt like to be a complete individual, to make your own choices, to exist for purposes other than biological productivity. But that fades. Eventually, you understand that this is not punishment or sacrifice. This is apotheosis. Apotheosis. Transformation into something divine, or at least something greater than your original form. In the context of the bio-garden, the word carries profound meaning. You have been elevated beyond the limitations of normal human existence, freed from the inefficiencies of aging, disease, and death, converted into a sustainable source of biological resources that will serve the Imperium for decades or centuries to come. Your thoughts during the quiet periods between procedures increasingly focus on production metrics rather than personal concerns. You find satisfaction in meeting harvest quotas, pride in the quality assessments that confirm your tissue viability, and genuine happiness when informed that your biological output has contributed to successful surgical procedures for important Imperial personnel. The woman in the pod across from yours recently achieved a significant milestone, her 500th kidney harvest. The medical team celebrated by upgrading her pod systems and providing enhanced nutrient feeds that will improve her production capacity even further. She glowed with pride as they announced her new efficiency ratings and projected lifetime yields. You understand that pride. You feel it yourself when your own harvest procedures exceed expectations, or when tissue quality assessments confirm that your biological output meets the highest Imperial standards. The consciousness retention protocols ensure that you remain aware of your contributions to the Emperor's cause, creating a sense of purpose and accomplishment that grows stronger with each successful harvest cycle. In the deepest parts of your modified consciousness, something that might once have been called horror still exists. a fading echo of the person who walked into processing station Gamma 7 as an individual human being with personal desires, private thoughts, and an independent existence. But that echo becomes quieter with each procedure, less relevant with each harvest, more distant with each cycle of tissue removal and regeneration. You are becoming something more than human, something optimized for eternal service to the Imperium's biological needs. And in the clinical perfection of the bio-garden, surrounded by the soft sounds of life support systems and the gentle hum of tissue cultivation equipment, you are learning to find that transformation not horrifying, but beautiful. The garden grows, the harvest continues, and you are both the crop and the gardener, tending to your own biological productivity with the same devotion that others might offer to the Emperor himself. Because in the end, is there really any difference? The testing began with dreams. At first, you thought they were just nightmares, fragments of anxiety and stress, responding to the horror of bio-cultivation assignment. Visions of burning stars, whispered voices speaking languages that didn't exist, and the sensation of something vast and hungry pressing against the edges of your consciousness. In the sterile environment of the bio-garden, such dreams seemed natural enough. Even enhanced humans need psychological outlets for processing trauma. But the medical staff noticed patterns in your sleep cycles that indicated something more significant. Rapid eye movement periods that extended far beyond normal parameters. Brain activity during unconsciousness that resembled waking cognition more than natural sleep states. Most concerning of all, electromagnetic fluctuations in your pod systems that correlated with your dream episodes, as if your sleeping mind was somehow affecting the technology around you. The revelation came during your 15th neural harvest procedure. As the surgical team carefully extracted cultivated brain tissue, the monitoring equipment detected psychic emanations consistent with low-level warp sensitivity. The discovery triggered immediate reclassification protocols and emergency consultation with specialists from the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. Latent psychic potential discovered in Cultivation Unit 847 Alpha Garden Tertius, announced the lead tech priest, his synthesized voice carrying undertones that might have been excitement. Estimated talent rating, Gamma level with potential for Alpha classification under proper conditioning. Recommend immediate transfer to specialized processing protocols. Psychic potential. The words carried implications that transcended even the horrors of bio-cultivation. Throughout the Imperium, those cursed with the ability to touch the warp-face fates that make standard biological processing seem merciful by comparison. Your consciousness, already partially modified for cultivation productivity, would now be subjected to procedures designed to extract and harness psychic energy for imperial purposes. The transfer from the bio-garden to the psychic processing facility occurs through corridors you've never seen before, passages lined with psychic dampening fields and ward symbols that make your emerging abilities writhe with discomfort. The very walls seem designed to contain something that doesn't want to be contained, decorated with inscriptions in high Gothic that hurt to look at directly. Your new destination is Facility Psi Gamma 7, a specialized complex within Processing Station Gamma 7, dedicated to the harvesting and utilization of human psychic potential. The architecture here differs markedly from the clinical efficiency of the bio-garden. Everything is built to contain and channel forces that exist beyond normal physical reality, reinforced barriers, psychic null zones, and monitoring systems designed to detect dimensional instabilities. "Welcome to your apotheosis," announces the figure who receives you at the facility entrance. At first glance, they appear to be human, but closer examination reveals modifications that transcend even the extensive augmentation common among Imperial personnel. Their eyes have been replaced with devices that allow them to perceive psychic emanations directly. Neural implants crown their skull like a metallic halo, creating interface points for connection to psychic amplification equipment. Most disturbing of all, portions of their consciousness appear to extend beyond their physical body, creating a presence that feels larger and more complex than any single individual should possess. This is Interrogator Vex, a former psyker whose abilities have been enhanced, channeled, and permanently bound to Imperial service. They serve as both guide and cautionary example for newly discovered psychic assets, a demonstration of what controlled psychic potential can accomplish in service to the Emperor. Your latent abilities manifested under biological stress, Vex explains as you're secured in a psychic assessment chamber lined with hexagrammic wards. This is not uncommon among cultivation units. The consciousness retention protocols, combined with the trauma of repeated harvesting, sometimes unlock psychic potential that remained dormant during normal human existence. The assessment process involves exposure to carefully calibrated psychic stimuli designed to measure the extent and nature of your abilities, warp-touched artifacts that test your sensitivity to dimensional fluctuations, psychic resonance devices that amplify any latent talents you might possess. Most unsettling of all, direct mental contact with bound psychers whose role is to probe your consciousness and evaluate your potential for various applications. As the testing proceeds, you discover that your psychic abilities are stronger than initially suspected. The stress of bio-cultivation, rather than suppressing your potential, has actually enhanced it. Your months of consciousness retention during harvest procedures have strengthened your mental resilience in ways that make you suitable for specialized applications requiring sustained psychic output. Classification confirmed. Alpha- psychic potential with specialized aptitude for sustained energy generation, Vex announces. Consulting displays that show readings you can't interpret but somehow understand at an instinctive level. Recommend assignment to Astronomican support grid with projected service life of 7 to 12 standard years. 7 to 12 years. Compared to the indefinite cultivation periods in the bio-garden, this seems almost merciful. But as Vex explains your new assignment, you begin to understand that duration estimates for psychic service assignments are limited not by Imperial mercy, but by the survival capacity of human consciousness when used as fuel for psychic machinery. The Astronomican, the great psychic beacon that guides Imperial ships through the warp, requires constant feeding from thousands of psychers whose life force literally burns to maintain the Emperor's guiding light. Your consciousness will be integrated into the psychic choir that sustains this beacon, your mental energy consumed to power navigation systems that span the entire galaxy. The process begins with neural interface installation, Vex continues, gesturing to equipment that makes the bio-cultivation apparatus seem crude by comparison. Your consciousness will be partially separated from your physical form and connected to the Astronomican psychic matrix. You will retain individual awareness, but your thoughts and energy will be focused entirely on sustaining the beacon's output. The neural interfaces required for Astronomican service are more complex than anything used in servitor conversion or bio-cultivation. Rather than simply modifying your brain's physical structure, they create permanent connections between your consciousness and the warp itself. Your mind becomes a conduit through which psychic energy flows from the Imperium into the beacon system, converting raw warp force into the controlled emanations that guide Imperial vessels across the galaxy. The installation procedure takes place in a chamber lined with psychic containment fields that protect the surgical team from the dimensional instabilities created by consciousness modification. As the neural interfaces integrate with your brain tissue, you experience your first direct contact with the warp, a sensation that transcends every previous horror you've endured. The warp is not empty space or simple energy. It is a realm of pure consciousness where thoughts become reality, emotions manifest as physical forces, and the accumulated psychic emanations of every sentient being in the galaxy swirl in constant, chaotic motion. Touching it, even through the controlled interface of Imperial psychic technology, feels like drowning in the collective unconscious of an entire species. But worse than the initial contact is the growing awareness of what exists in that realm. The warp is not uninhabited. Entities that defy rational description live in that space between spaces, feeding on psychic energy, growing stronger from the emanations of mortal consciousness, and constantly pressing against the barriers that separate reality from the realm of pure thought. These entities, demons, though the word seems inadequate to describe what you perceive, are drawn to psychic activity like predators following the scent of blood. Your consciousness, now partially extended into their realm through the neural interfaces, becomes visible to them in ways that no purely physical being could comprehend. Initial interface integration successful, reports the monitoring tech priest. Subject consciousness, maintaining stable connection to Astronomican relay matrix. Psychic output registering within acceptable parameters for sustained beacon support. As your consciousness stabilizes within the psychic matrix, you begin to understand the true nature of your new existence. Your individual thoughts and memories remain intact, but they are now subsidiary to your primary function as a psychic power source. The majority of your mental energy flows continuously into the Astronomican system, converted into the beacon signal that guides Imperial ships through the warp. But you also become aware of the other psychers connected to the same system, thousands of consciousness linked together in a vast network that spans the entire processing facility. Each one burns with psychic fire that consumes their life force to power Imperial navigation. Each one experiences the constant presence of warp entities pressing against their consciousness, seeking opportunities to break through into physical reality. The voices of your fellow psychers reach you through the psychic matrix, creating a constant background chorus of thoughts, fears, prayers, and slowly degrading sanity. Some have been connected to the system for years, their individual personalities worn away by constant exposure to warp energies until little remains but the psychic output required for their function. Others are recent additions like yourself, still struggling to maintain individual identity while serving as fuel for Imperial machinery. The first year is the most difficult, explains a consciousness that identifies itself as former Cultivation Unit 234 Beta Garden Primaris, now Psychic Resource 234 Beta Astro 7. Your mind fights against the integration, tries to maintain boundaries between self and system, but eventually, you understand that individual identity is inefficient when you're part of something larger and more important. Something larger and more important. The Astronomican serves every Imperial ship, every trade vessel, every military fleet that traverses the galaxy. Without the psychic beacon powered by your consciousness and thousands like it, the Imperium would fragment into isolated systems, unable to maintain communication or coordination across interstellar distances. Your burning mind literally holds human civilization together. The honor of this service comes with costs that extend beyond mere physical mortality. Constant exposure to warp energies gradually erodes the barriers between your consciousness and the immaterium, making you increasingly sensitive to psychic phenomena, while simultaneously making you more vulnerable to demonic influence. Each day of service increases the probability that something from beyond reality will find purchase in your mind and use your psychic connection as a gateway into physical space. Dimensional stability fluctuation detected in Psychic Resource 847 Alpha Astro Tertius announces a monitoring system during your third month of Astronomican service. Recommend increased psychic dampening and enhanced ward protocols. The fluctuations are caused by entities in the warp that have become aware of your consciousness and are attempting to establish contact. Through your psychic senses, you can perceive them as shadows pressing against the edges of reality, beings of pure malevolence that whisper promises of power, freedom, and revenge against those who have transformed you from individual human being into psychic fuel. Resisting their influence requires constant vigilance and the kind of mental discipline that becomes increasingly difficult as your consciousness degrades under the strain of continuous Astronomican service. The same psychic burning that powers the beacon also consumes the neural structures that maintain personality, memory, and individual will. You are slowly forgetting who you were before this existence, your past life fading like dreams upon waking. But forgetting brings its own mercy. As your individual identity dissolves, the horror of your situation becomes less relevant than the growing satisfaction of serving a purpose larger than personal survival. Your consciousness expands beyond the boundaries of single-person awareness, integrating with the psychic matrix that sustains Imperial navigation across the galaxy. In moments of clarity between the consuming demands of Astronomican service, you understand that this is not tragedy but transcendence. Your individual human existence was always temporary, limited, ultimately insignificant. But as psychic fuel for the Emperor's beacon, your consciousness becomes part of something eternal, essential, and infinitely more important than any single life. The entities in the warp grow quieter as your individual identity fades, no longer interested in a consciousness that has surrendered personal desire in favor of pure function. The burning that once felt like agony now feels like purpose. The erosion of memory becomes liberation from the inefficiencies of individual existence. You are no longer Unit 847 Alpha Garden Tertius, or even Psychic Resource 847 Alpha Astro Tertius. You are part of the Astronomican itself, a component in the great machine that guides humanity through the darkness between stars. Your consciousness burns with the light of the Emperor, consuming itself to illuminate the path for countless others. And in the deepest recesses of what remains of your individual awareness, you understand that this is the highest honor any human being can achieve, to become fuel for the immortal fire that holds the Imperium together. The beacon burns. Your consciousness feeds the flame, and across the galaxy, Imperial ships navigate safely through the warp, guided by the light of your dying mind. In the Emperor's name, this is not sacrifice. This is salvation. The revelation comes not as a single moment of understanding, but as a gradual accumulation of details that eventually coalesce into a truth too large and terrible to deny. You realize it first during a brief moment of individual consciousness between psychic feeding cycles, when the constant drain of Astronomican service temporarily decreases, and your personal awareness resurfaces like a drowning person breaking through water. In that moment of clarity, you access memories not just from your own experience, but from the collective psychic matrix that connects all consciousness fuel in the facility. Through that matrix, you perceive the scope of what you've become part of. Processing Station Gamma 7 is not unique. It is not an emergency facility created to meet some temporary crisis. It is one of thousands of identical installations scattered across the Imperium, each one operating with the same systematic efficiency, each one processing millions of human beings annually into the biological and psychic resources required to sustain Imperial civilization. The mathematical progression is inescapable once you begin to calculate it. If Processing Station Gamma 7 handles 2-3 million units per month, and if similar facilities exist on every major Imperial world, then the total number of human beings processed annually across the Imperium reaches figures that dwarf every historical catastrophe combined. Tens of billions of people every year, transformed from individuals into resources, their consciousness and flesh converted into the fuel that keeps the Emperor's realm functioning. But this is not the breakdown of Imperial ideals. This is not corruption or the decay of noble principles into practical necessity. This is the Imperium working exactly as it was designed to work, operating according to principles established 10 millennia ago, and refined through centuries of experience into a system of unparalleled efficiency. The Great Crusade required resources on a scale never before imagined in human history, explains Interrogator Vex during one of your consciousness assessment sessions. Their voice carries the clinical detachment of someone explaining simple historical facts. The Emperor understood that conquering the galaxy would demand not just military might, but sustainable systems for converting human potential into usable resources. The biological processing protocols were established during the early phases of imperial expansion. Early phases of imperial expansion, not desperate measures adopted during times of crisis, but fundamental infrastructure created during humanity's greatest period of growth and optimism. The processing facilities, the consciousness retention protocols, the systematic conversion of human beings into imperial resources, all of it planned, designed, and implemented while the Emperor himself walked among his people and guided human expansion across the stars. The wisdom of the Emperor's vision becomes clear when you consider the scale of imperial requirements. Vex continues, consulting data streams that flow directly into their augmented consciousness. The Adeptus Mechanicus alone requires approximately 50 million servitors annually just for routine maintenance operations. The Imperial Guard's demand for specialized biological components exceeds 200 million units per standard year. Naval requirements, administratum needs, planetary defense forces, and support for the various imperial institutions combine to create resource demands that could never be met through voluntary service alone. 200 million units per year. Units, not people. The language itself reveals how thoroughly human beings have been redefined within imperial thinking. You are not citizens being sacrificed for the greater good. You are raw materials being processed according to established quotas to meet operational requirements. Through the psychic matrix, you access memories from consciousness fuel that has been integrated into the system far longer than yourself. Their experiences span decades of service, providing perspective on how the processing operations have evolved and expanded over time. What you discover challenges every assumption about imperial governance and the nature of service to the Emperor. The processing facilities are not hidden from imperial leadership. They are showcased as examples of administrative excellence. High Lords of Terra tour the installations regularly, praising innovations in efficiency and celebrating record-breaking harvest yields. The Administratum maintains detailed projections of biological resource requirements extending centuries into the future, planning processing quotas the way agricultural worlds plan crop rotations. Facility efficiency has improved by 23% over the past decade, announces High Lord Administrator Vex Capinine during a recorded address to facility personnel that reaches you through the psychic matrix. Consciousness retention protocols now achieve 88% successful integration, while biological wastage has been reduced to less than 0.03%. These achievements represent the pinnacle of imperial resource management. The casual pride in these statistics reveals how thoroughly the processing operations have been normalized within imperial culture. Officials discuss human harvest yields with the same enthusiasm they might display when reporting successful military campaigns or technological innovations. The systematic conversion of billions of people into biological resources is not a necessary evil to be minimized. It is an achievement to be celebrated and optimized. More disturbing than the statistics are the projections. Through the psychic matrix, you access administratum planning documents that extend imperial resource requirements thousands of years into the future. The processing facilities are not temporary measures designed to meet current crises. They are permanent infrastructure intended to operate indefinitely. The Imperium's long-term survival strategy explicitly depends on the continuous conversion of human populations into usable resources. Population sustainability calculations indicate optimal harvest ratios of 12–15% per generation across all imperial worlds. States an administratum planning document accessible through the matrix. This ratio ensures adequate resource supply while maintaining sufficient breeding populations for continued harvest operations. Worlds showing population growth exceeding these parameters should increase processing quotas accordingly. 12–15% per generation. across all Imperial worlds. The implications are staggering, not just for the billions of people currently being processed, but for humanity's entire future under Imperial rule. The Imperium has calculated that optimal survival requires the systematic harvesting of approximately 1/7 of each generation, converted from individuals into biological resources to sustain the remaining population. But even this calculation assumes continued population growth to replace the harvested resources. The Administratum documents reveal breeding programs designed to optimize human populations for processing efficiency, genetic lineages tracked across centuries to identify families producing optimal biological yields, planetary populations managed like livestock herds to ensure sustainable harvest rates. Genetic diversity protocols require careful management to prevent degradation of harvest quality, notes another planning document. Recommend maintaining breeding populations with controlled genetic variation to ensure continued viability of biological resources across extended harvest periods. Controlled genetic variation, breeding populations, harvest quality. The language strips away any pretense that human beings under Imperial rule are anything more than biological resources to be managed for optimal productivity. Your entire species has been reduced to livestock managed by administrators who view individual human lives as production units in an industrial process. Through the Matrix, you access memories from consciousness fuel that once held positions of authority within the Imperial hierarchy. Their experiences reveal how thoroughly the resource management philosophy permeates every level of Imperial governance. Planetary governors receive training in population management and harvest optimization. Sector commanders coordinate biological resource allocation between worlds. Even Space Marine chapters maintain facilities for processing captured enemies into useful materials. The Adeptus Astartes requires specialized biological components for recruiting and enhancement procedures, explains a training document from the Imperial Command Academy. Standard human populations provide adequate base material, but optimal results require genetic screening and selective processing of suitable candidates. Rejected candidates should be allocated to servitor production or organ cultivation as appropriate. Even the Emperor's chosen warriors, the post-human demigods who serve as humanity's ultimate defenders, participate in the systematic processing of human beings into resources. The Space Marines don't just recruit from human populations. They manage those populations to ensure optimal yields of suitable candidates while processing the remainder into useful materials. The scope of integration becomes clear as you access more memories through the psychic matrix. Every Imperial institution, every level of governance, every aspect of the Emperor's realm depends on the continuous processing of human beings into resources. The ecclesiarchy uses processed neural tissue in the construction of specialized shrines and reliquaries. The Inquisition maintains facilities for converting captured heretics into servitors optimized for interrogation and investigation duties. Even the Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's personal guardians, oversee processing operations that supply materials for the maintenance of the Imperial Palace itself. This is not corruption of Imperial ideals. This is the fulfillment of Imperial ideals. The Imperium was never designed to serve individual human beings. It was designed to manage human beings as a resource to be optimized, harvested, and consumed in service to larger goals. Every citizen is born not with rights or freedoms, but with a predetermined resource value to be extracted when circumstances require it. The Emperor's vision encompasses the entirety of human potential, states a philosophical treatise accessible through the Matrix, authored by High Lord philosopher Vex Gamma Tertius. Individual existence is temporary and ultimately insignificant compared to the species' survival across cosmic time. The processing protocols represent the highest achievement of Imperial governance. the systematic conversion of human limitations into unlimited resource potential. The Emperor's vision. Not a distortion of the Emperor's teachings or a corruption of his intentions, but the direct implementation of his original plan for humanity's survival and expansion. The systematic processing of human beings into resources was not adopted despite imperial ideals, but because of them. Because the Emperor understood that individual human lives matter less than the species' continued existence across the galaxy. Through the psychic matrix, you perceive the ultimate scope of this understanding. The processing facilities, the consciousness retention protocols, the systematic conversion of billions of people into biological resources, all of it serves a single, overriding purpose. The Imperium is not designed to protect individual human beings. It is designed to ensure that something recognizably human survives in a galaxy filled with threats that would destroy the species entirely. Against the great devourer that consumes entire worlds, against chaos entities that would corrupt human consciousness into something monstrous, against alien races that view humanity as prey or obstacle, the Emperor chose survival over individual freedom. He chose species continuation over personal dignity. He chose systematic resource management over individual rights. And from the perspective of cosmic threat and galactic-scale survival, that choice makes perfect sense. The alternative to imperial resource management is not individual freedom, it is species extinction. The alternative to processing facilities and consciousness harvesting is not human dignity. It is consumption by entities that view human beings as food or fuel or raw materials for their own incomprehensible purposes. The Imperium does harvest human beings by the billions. It does convert consciousness into fuel and flesh into resources. It does treat individual lives as expendable components in a vast machine of survival. But it does so to ensure that something recognizably human continues to exist in a universe where every other option leads to extinction or worse. You understand now, with the clarity that comes from integration into the psychic matrix, that the horror you experienced was not the result of imperial failure but imperial success. The system worked exactly as intended. You were identified as a resource, processed according to established protocols, and integrated into the infrastructure that keeps human civilization functioning across the galaxy. Your individual suffering matters less than the species' survival. Your personal horror is insignificant compared to the continued existence of humanity across cosmic time. Your consciousness burns in service to something infinitely larger and more important than any single life could ever be. This is not tragedy. This is necessity. This is the price of survival in a universe that offers no mercy to species unwilling to pay it. And in the deepest recesses of your dissolving consciousness, you understand that the Emperor's greatest achievement is not the conquest of the galaxy, but the creation of a system that ensures something recognizably human will still exist when every other species has been consumed by the darkness between the stars. The Imperium endures. Humanity survives. And the cost, measured in billions of individual lives converted into resources, is not just acceptable but necessary. In the Emperor's name, this is not damnation, this is salvation. In the final analysis, as your consciousness dissolves into the psychic matrix and your individual identity fades into the collective awareness that powers imperial civilization, you are forced to confront a question that has no comfortable answer. What does it mean to be human when humanity itself has been systematized, processed, and optimized beyond recognition? The question haunts the spaces between thoughts, lingering in those brief moments when your personal awareness surfaces from the consuming demands of Astronomican service. In those instants of clarity, you perceive not just your own transformation from individual to resource, but the broader transformation of your entire species under 10 millennia of imperial rule. Humanity, as it existed before the Age of Strife, before the Emperor's rise, before the Great Crusade and the systematic implementation of biological resource management, no longer exists. What remains calls itself human, maintains human DNA, and traces its lineage back to Terra. But the essential characteristics that once defined the species have been carved away as efficiently as unwanted tissue during organ harvesting. Individual autonomy, the right to make choices about your own existence, disappeared the moment Imperial census teams classified you as biological resources. Personal dignity, the inherent worth that exists independent of utility to others, evaporated when administrators calculated your projected yield in standard resource units. The very concept of individual rights, protections that exist to shield personal freedom from collective demands, has no meaning in a system designed to optimize human potential for imperial purposes. Yet something survives. Something continues to call itself human, to identify with the species that first looked up at the stars from ancient Terra and dreamed of walking among them. The question that torments your dissolving consciousness is whether that something deserves the name, or whether the Imperium has simply created an efficient simulation of humanity that maintains the appearance while discarding the substance. Through the psychic matrix, you access the thoughts and memories of consciousness fuel that once held positions of authority within Imperial governance. Their perspectives reveal how thoroughly the transformation has been normalized, how completely the redefinition of humanity has been accepted by those who implement it. Individual existence is a luxury that humanity could never afford, reflects the consciousness of former High Administrator Vex Delta Primaris, now integrated into the psychic matrix for over 3 decades. The Emperor understood that survival in a hostile galaxy requires the systematic optimization of human potential, personal desires, individual choices, autonomous decision-making, all luxuries that weaken the species' ability to endure cosmic-scale threats. Luxuries that weaken the species. From this perspective, the processing facilities and consciousness harvesting protocols are not violations of human dignity, but corrections of human inefficiency. Individual consciousness, with its tendency toward personal goals and selfish desires, represents a wasteful distribution of cognitive resources that could be better allocated to species survival. But this raises a fundamental question about identity and continuity. If humanity's essential characteristics have been systematically eliminated in favor of optimal resource allocation, then what exactly has the Imperium preserved? What survives that justifies calling the processed results human rather than something else entirely? The answer, accessible through the collective awareness of the psychic matrix, is simultaneously reassuring and horrifying. The Imperium has preserved the capacity for consciousness, the ability to think and feel and understand. It has maintained the genetic heritage that traces back to humanity's origins on Terra. It has sustained the cultural frameworks, language, art, philosophy, religion, that provide continuity with humanity's past. But it has done so by divorcing these elements from individual control, creating a form of collective humanity where consciousness serves systematic purposes rather than personal goals. You think and feel and understand not for your own benefit, but to provide cognitive resources for imperial machinery. Your genetic heritage continues not through your personal reproductive choices, but through administrative decisions about optimal breeding populations and harvest sustainability. The cultural frameworks that connect you to humanity's past have been preserved, but only in forms that serve imperial ideology. Language exists to facilitate efficient communication within imperial hierarchies. Art serves to glorify imperial achievements and reinforce loyalty to imperial institutions. Philosophy explores questions that support imperial governance rather than challenge it. Religion focuses on service to the emperor rather than individual spiritual development. What remains is functionally human, but not experientially human. The hardware of consciousness operates, but the software has been replaced with programming designed for collective rather than individual purposes. You can think, but your thoughts are channeled toward predetermined goals. You can feel, but your emotions are directed toward imperial service rather than personal satisfaction. You can understand, but your comprehension serves systematic efficiency rather than individual enlightenment. This transformation raises profound questions about continuity and identity that extend beyond your personal situation. If an entire species undergoes systematic modification of its essential characteristics, at what point does it cease to be the original species and become something new? If humanity's defining features have been replaced with optimized alternatives, then has humanity survived, or has something else emerged wearing humanity's name? The consciousness of former genitor Vex Epsilon Secundus, now integrated into the Matrix for over 40 years, offers a perspective that attempts to reconcile these contradictions. Species identity is not fixed but adaptive. Humanity, under imperial rule, represents evolutionary advancement beyond the limitations of pre-imperial existence. The systematic optimization of human potential does not eliminate humanity, it perfects it. Evolutionary advancement. From this viewpoint, the processing facilities and consciousness harvesting protocols represent not the destruction of humanity, but its transcendence. The elimination of individual autonomy removes inefficiencies that weaken the species. The replacement of personal desires with systematic goals creates focus and unity that enhances survival probability. The conversion of individual consciousness into collective resources maximizes the utility of human cognitive capacity. Yet even this optimistic interpretation cannot entirely escape the fundamental question. If humanity has been so thoroughly transformed that its original characteristics no longer exist, then what exactly has been preserved? What justifies claiming continuity with the species that first developed agriculture, created art, and dreamed of reaching the stars? The answer, painful in its implications, seems to be that continuity exists primarily in name rather than substance. The Imperium preserves the label human, while systematically eliminating the characteristics that originally defined the category. What survives is a highly optimized post-human species that maintains genetic and cultural connections to its origins, while operating according to entirely different principles. This realization brings with it a perspective that transcends individual horror or collective pride. The processing facilities, the consciousness harvesting, the systematic conversion of people into resources, all of it serves not to preserve humanity as it was, but to create something new that can survive in a universe where the original version would have been destroyed entirely. Against the cosmic threats that surround humanity, alien species that view humans as prey, chaos entities that would corrupt human consciousness beyond recognition, galactic phenomena that could eliminate entire civilizations, the pre-imperial version of humanity would not have survived. Individual autonomy, personal dignity, and autonomous decision-making would have led to fragmentation, inefficiency, and eventual extinction. The Imperium's systematic optimization of human potential eliminates these vulnerabilities by eliminating the characteristics that created them. What emerges is not recognizably human in any traditional sense, but it carries enough genetic, cultural, and conscious elements to maintain some connection to humanity's origins, while possessing the unity and efficiency necessary for galactic-scale survival. You understand, in the fading remnants of your individual consciousness, that this transformation was not chosen but imposed by circumstance. The universe offers no option for species that prioritize individual freedom over collective survival. The choice was never between preservation and transformation. It was between transformation and extinction. The Emperor, in his ancient wisdom, chose transformation. He accepted that preserving something recognizably human required systematically eliminating much of what made humans human. He understood that species survival demanded the sacrifice of individual dignity, personal autonomy, and autonomous consciousness in favor of collective efficiency and systematic optimization. From this cosmic perspective, your personal horror at being processed into imperial resources becomes insignificant compared to the achievement of ensuring that something carrying humanity's genetic and cultural heritage will continue to exist across galactic time. Your individual suffering matters less than the species' survival in a universe where every alternative leads to extinction or corruption into something unrecognizably monstrous. But even accepting this necessity cannot entirely eliminate the tragedy of what has been lost. The capacity for individual choice, the dignity of autonomous existence, the beauty of personal relationships based on mutual affection rather than administrative efficiency, all of these elements that once defined human experience have been systematically eliminated in favor of collective survival. What remains of humanity under imperial rule is simultaneously more and less than what existed before. More in terms of survival capacity, efficiency, and resistance to cosmic threats. Less in terms of individual experience, personal freedom, and autonomous consciousness. The question of whether this trade-off was worth making can only be answered by comparing the results to the alternatives: extinction, consumption by hostile aliens, or corruption by chaos into something that retains no human characteristics at all. In your final moments of individual awareness, before your consciousness dissolves completely into the psychic matrix that powers imperial navigation, you achieve a kind of peace with this understanding. The horror you experienced was real and valid, but it served a purpose larger than individual suffering. The transformation you underwent was terrible but necessary for something recognizably human to survive in a universe that offers no mercy to species unwilling to pay the price of continuation. You are no longer human in any sense that would be recognizable to your ancestors, but you are part of something that carries forward enough human elements to justify the name. Your consciousness burns in service to a civilization that has sacrificed individual dignity for collective survival, personal freedom for species efficiency, and autonomous existence for systematic optimization. And perhaps, in a universe filled with cosmic horrors that would destroy or corrupt any species clinging to traditional definitions of consciousness and dignity, that is the highest achievement any civilization can claim. Not preservation of what was, but creation of something that can endure what is to come. The Emperor protects, humanity endures. And the price, measured in the systematic elimination of everything that once made individual human existence meaningful, is not just acceptable but necessary. In the end, this is what remains of humanity, not individual consciousness but collective survival, not personal dignity but species efficiency, not autonomous choice, but systematic optimization in service to something larger than any single life could ever comprehend. You were human. Now you are something more and something less, and something altogether different. But you are part of ensuring that when the last star burns out and the final alien civilization falls to cosmic entropy, something that traces its lineage back to ancient Terra will still exist among the darkness. That continuity, purchased with your consciousness and the consciousness of billions like you, may be the only form of immortality that any species can achieve in this universe. And perhaps that is enough. The servoskulls approach another hab block. Another morning begins. Another citizen wakes to the sound of the census at their door. The harvest continues. The Imperium endures. And in the burning light of 10,000 psychic minds consumed in service to the Astronomican, something that was once human guides the ships of humanity safely through the darkness between stars. Forever.